All right, it's a minute or two after one. I say, well, let's go ahead and get started. And as folks join us, they can enter the webinar, and we'll just continue on. But I want to say thank you to everybody for being here with us today. We're really excited about this month's webinar. But first, let me introduce myself. My name is Shane Barton. I'm with the University of Kentucky's Community and Economic Development Initiative of Kentucky. And this webinar is part of our monthly webinar series, the Brownfield Redevelopment webinar series, that is brought to you by a partnership between the University of Kentucky's Community and Economic Development Initiative of Kentucky and the Kentucky Energy and Environment Cabinet's Department of Environmental Protection's Brownfield program. Throughout the year, really the last year and a half, we've been hosting webinars, doing lots of great programming, outreach, engagement, working directly with communities, and have a lot more sort of training, workshop, and other opportunities on the horizon. In particular, I want to make sure everyone is aware that we have an upcoming grant review event scheduled for October 16th. That will take place in Lexington. We are doing pre-registrations right now and have opened it up. And if anyone would like part of their proposal reviewed, we will need to receive those by October 9th to give ourselves some time to review and provide comment. But again, thank you all for joining us. We're really excited about today's webinar. As you know, the EPA fiscal year 25 brownfield solicitations were recently released. That's what we've all been building up to over the last year or so. And we are really excited to have Derek Street with us today to talk about some of the updates, some of the changes, and to provide us a little insight around this year's solicitation. So I'm going to turn it over to Derek. He's going to provide us a quick little introduction, let us know who he is, and we'll jump right into today's webinar. And just like always, you will see a Q&A function on your Zoom screen. And if at any point throughout the presentation you have a question, please feel free to include it in the Q&A. And at the end of the presentation, we'll circle back to those and address as many as we can. So without further ado, Derek, thank you so much for joining us. And I'm going to turn it over to you.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate it. And I'm glad to get to present to Kentucky. I've done this presentation a few times now, and it was only recently for the Alabama Brownfield Association conference last week, which already feels like a month ago. I decided to update it to something a little more visually appealing than the typical boring presentations I feel like EPA always did. And I think a good way to look at this is like the FY25 assessment, revolving loan fund, and cleanup grant applications are kind of like a road trip. You've got a start and you have where you're going in the end. And in this case, our journey is from when the notice of funding opportunities were released on September 2nd, 2024, till when they're due on November 14th, 2024. And of course, hopefully some of you get to your destination of submitting before the last day, but you can submit until 11:59 p.m. on November 14th. So when I plan a trip or a journey like this, I think it's important to look back and see where we've gone before. So maybe you want to go to the same place again. Maybe you want to go somewhere new. Maybe you want to focus on a different type of award. So let's look at what the FY24 grant competition was like for Kentucky and the region, just to give a little bit of background on how everything shook out in that competition. So on the left side of the screen, I've put together the number of grant applications by type we received in Kentucky: 2 community-wide assessments, 3 coalition assessments, 2 multi-purpose, and 2 cleanup grants. And I didn't break the cleanup grants out by type. I know one of them was the up to $5 million limit for a total of 9, and 4 were selected overall. which means Kentucky had a 44% success rate on the applications that were submitted in FY24. And over on the right of the screen, I put the names of those applicants who got selected. Quite a few dollars involved here. So if we have anyone with I should have turned my teams off. I just realized as that popped up. City of Barberville received a multi-purpose grant for $1 million. Kentuckiana Regional Planning and Development Agency received a coalition assessment grant for $1.5 million. Kentucky River Area Development District also received a coalition assessment grant for $1.5 million. And the big one, Kentucky Steam Heritage Corporation received $4,999,520 for a cleanup in Irvine, Kentucky. That is the biggest standalone award I have seen in Region 4. So congratulations to everybody who was selected this year. It really is remarkable to see the size of these awards and what people have been able to do with them over the last few years of the bill cycles. Just for perspective, in terms of everything we received within EPA Region 4, there were 75 grant applications submitted for review. You can see that by far the most were submitted for the CWA or community-wide assessment grants, and a shocking only 6 were funded for a 15% success rate. Community-wide assessment grants have traditionally been sort of the bread and butter of EPA Region 4. We get the most grant applications. We probably have the most active grants of any region, but it doesn't necessarily translate into the most money of any region. If you're a state like Kentucky and you're thinking about applying for a community-wide assessment grant for states and tribes, I hope you can see from the slide there was one submitted in Region 4 in FY24, and that one was funded for a great 100% success rate. I think another way to look at the funding in terms of what Kentucky received is you could look at the overall success rate, and it was 44%. But if you look at the table here, and I've put stars on either side of Kentucky, the grant applications from Kentucky totaled approximately $12.6 million and receiving approximately $9 million of that. And that is 71% of that funding request from communities in the state being met thanks to the bipartisan infrastructure law. And you can see as a region, all of the grant applications cumulatively almost 73 million, and we awarded almost $41 million in the region this year. So there's a lot going on in this table, and I think it's useful to see what the trends have been over the last few years. FY23 was a little bit of an outlier when you look at the estimated number of awards and how many were funded, and 108. That's not going to happen again because there's just not the staff to handle that many awards. But one thing to note is when you look at the community-wide assessment grants, which we get so many of in Region 4, people have begun to take the cues from headquarters that it's the larger grants that are getting focused on, because even on a $5 million grant, you only need one project officer. On a $500,000 community-wide assessment grant, it's still one project officer. So it's redistributing the workload in a more manageable way. And so you can see it's dropped from 277 received nationally to 200 last year. And this year, they're proposing to fund slightly more assessment grants, community-wide assessment grants, with 40 new applicants and 52 existing Brownfield applicants for a total of 92. Keep that number in mind because there's something I want to point out about it in one of my later slides. This is also an RLF year, so no multi-purpose, but the revolving loan fund comes back, which is my program. I'm the RLF lead for EPA Region 4, and I'm currently doing a skills marketplace position with headquarters, helping with policy, while the national RLF position is vacant. So if you're interested in applying for an RLF, I'm definitely the person to come talk to. Get my contact information out of the back of the NOFO and follow up with me. Something else you should keep in mind when you look at the number of estimated awards, how many applications we receive, and what gets funded is the numbers change, and sometimes they're more than what was estimated, and in a few cases, they're less. When that happens, that money can be reallocated to different types of brownfield grants, with the one big caveat. The grants funded with annual appropriations, if all of the annual appropriations are not used on that particular type of grant, it'll get shifted to another type of grant to fund more of those, and vice versa with the bill funding. So they're estimating to do 18 state and tribal assessment grants. They've never even received 18 applications in a fiscal year ever. So that would be one I would look at in the notice of funding opportunities to see if it was bill or annual appropriations funding. And you may be able to have an idea of where surplus money from that category might get shifted. The other thing to note in that is that within some of the categories, you'll notice that when they don't fund everything they could, it's because they do set a threshold on the quality of an application. And if they don't receive enough that receive a score of a certain amount, headquarters can make the decision not to fund them and then to begin shifting the money elsewhere. So we finished our look back at everything. So let's talk about a few tips for this fiscal year 25 journey on the road we have laid out before us. So we have FY25 and FY26, and those are the last two competition cycles for the bill funding. There's approximately $535 million available for grant funding for the competitive grants, job training, the 128A funding for states and tribes, and the RLF supplemental funding that's received through a non-competitive process. And essentially, the decision that's been made by headquarters is to split it equally. So for FY25, there's approximately $262 million for all of these different grants and funding sources from EPA. And at FY26, the very final year of bill, there will be $272 million available. And the difference between the total and the numbers is used for other agency priorities with what little bit there is left. So once the bill money is gone after FY26 and we enter FY27, what you should expect is that you will see things return like cost shares on cleanup grants, multi-purpose grant, revolving loan funds. You're not going to see grants that are, 1.3 million like the coalition dropped to this year, or $4 million cleanup grants anymore. So let's talk about a few of the policy changes that were added in this year. Since the messaging, I think if you've ever been to one of the EPA Region 4 outreach sessions on grant writing, has been since Bill started, focus on the larger grants, because that's where you have a better chance at getting funded if you can fit all the pieces together. And within the assessment coalitions this year, they dropped the requirement on having to have a nonprofit partner, but instead they replaced it with you must have at least one non-lead member that has never been awarded a brownfield grant before. EPA would still encourage you to potentially work with nonprofits, but it's not one of the requirements. Also, if you have an open brownfield grant, to be a non-lead coalition member, you must have drawn down at least 70% of the funding on that grant. And I skipped ahead a little bit because I was forgetting my own slide, but like I had just said, applicants can still include a community-based nonprofit organization as a non-lead member, but it's no longer a requirement you would lose points on, or I believe the way it was worded, looked upon less favorably, which meant you were going to lose points. This is one of the bigger changes on the cleanup grants. And if you compare my slides to what is in the guidelines, you'll notice they're a little different. And I'm editorializing a little bit based off some conversations I had had prior to knowing this was going to be a policy switch with our Office of Regional Counsel, because there was always a way to get hazardous building materials like asbestos and lead paint eligible in cases where you didn't do a phase one. But it was very complicated, and I don't think it was something grantees understood. And in these cases where a community or nonprofit owns a building with hazardous building materials, there is an easier path to demonstrating eligibility now. And it's that you may not have Circular 107 impact or triggered Circular 107 if those building materials are intact at the site. But that means you cannot have a release. And the part I'm adding that's not in the guidelines is the threat of a release. Because even that could potentially lead to issues under circular. So signs that may indicate a release or a potential release has occurred or is possible is if your building has a collapsed roof, you've got exterior paint peeling on the ground, or you're missing windows and doors, even depending on how many of them there are, like it's a school gymnasium and for some reason it's full of asbestos. That might be enough of an issue to have triggered a release. I would encourage you to reach out to the national panel coordinators for EPA 4, which is myself and Nicole Rogers, whose contact information is in the notice of funding opportunities for the assessment and cleanup grants, to ask questions about this, just for that peace of mind that this is a process that would work for you if you want to go this route. Some other changes, maybe a little less substantial. The term disadvantaged census tract was changed to just disadvantaged community, but it still has to be disadvantaged as identified by CGEST. The next one was a little bit of an interesting change. You can include a map of your target area or priority sites, but keep in mind that that map is not scored and cannot be considered in scoring your proposal. And here's the part where I brought up the number of community-wide assessment grants that were going to be awarded, and there were going to be more awards than last year. One of the policy decisions headquarters made is that for the final selection of who gets funded on these, the selection official, which in my mind is some mysterious person in an office in DC, intends to select a minimum of 3 quality applications per region. So if you're doing it in region 4, yes, there's still a few more that are going to get funded overall, but 27 of them are locked up between the other 9 regions. And most notably, cleanup amounts changed slightly in the categories for up to 500,000, up to 2 million. And this year, the limit is up to 4 million. When you apply for a cleanup grant, of course, you're applying for whichever tier. It's not like you can apply for a higher tier, and if it's not funded, maybe it'll fall into the lower tier and get funded. That's just not the way it works. So transitioning a little bit to what I think people get the most benefit out of in this, and kind of the meat and potatoes of it, if you will, are we used to call it top 10 list and have a picture of David Letterman. And then when I did this at the Florida Brownfield Association and saw how young everybody was, I started thinking, I don't know if any of these people ever used to stay up late to watch David Letterman when they were in high school. So maybe I should change my references a little bit. To some degree, these are my opinions. They're not agency policy or anything like that. These are just the observations of someone who's reviewed. When I counted it up, I've scored 117 competitive grants. As the RLF lead, I have reviewed and approved 21 supplemental RLF funding requests. And overall, I've probably read 300 grant applications just to pull various information from them overall. So I've seen a thing or two when it comes to this. I've reviewed in Region 4, I've reviewed in other regions. I know some reviewers might have a little bit of a different take on these, but I think they're really good points to keep in mind. And the first one is you want to tell a story. You want to tell this story in a logical order of where are you now as a community? How did you get here? Which would be what has created the brownfields and the challenges you deal with now, where you are hoping to go or where you are going, and what you're going to do when you get there. And it's a very easy process to think about how the grant flows when you write it. The next one is be internally consistent. You'd be shocked at how often you read a grant and they start introducing new information really late in the proposal. Within the first section, when you talk about your alignment with local land use plans or proposed reuses for sites, people spell everything out. Then you get to community health, and all of a sudden, we're going to build a park. Well, you never talked about there was a need for a park before. Now you're introducing something entirely new, and it's breaking up that internal consistency of the story you're trying to tell the EPA. Number 6, or sorry, I'm jumping way ahead. Number 8, don't be generic. Sometimes people will say things because they take it out of another proposal because they thought it sounded good, or you're trying to cover all your bases, so you use really broad language. And I would encourage you not to do that. The language you use in this needs to be very specific to you as the applicant and the community or communities you're working with. If I could read your application for a grant and I could lift sentences out of it from, say, Kentucky, and they made sense in one I read from Vermont or North Dakota or Texas, it's too generic and you're not telling your story. Reviewers read a lot of these. I think within Region 4, because we get so many, it's not uncommon for reviewers to read 20 in a grant cycle and score them. And so they start to kind of blend together after a while because so many of them do lean heavily on the generic side. So it's very forgettable. But what makes something stand out is when you can tell they're telling a very specific story to themselves. I would also caution you against using words that can be generic, like blight. I live in Atlanta, and when I think of blight, I might get a really different picture of blight than what you're trying to convey as a writer if you're in Western Kentucky. It would be better if you explained what that means in terms of your community. Number 7, the evaluation criteria. I think this trips people up sometimes because only in the government would we give you a set of guidelines And there's two sets of criteria in there. They're pretty similar, but a little different at times from each other. When a reviewer scores your proposal, uh, they do not score from the ranking criteria when you look in there. The reviewers only use the evaluation criteria. So when you write your response to a criterion, you should be making sure you check every little thing that was in there in the evaluation criteria, because that is only what you will be scored against. And it would be very careful because the two can have slightly different wording from each other. Another thing people get tripped up on sometimes is the if, when, and or statements in there. People feel like, in my mind, maybe you get more points if it's something that's optional, but you add it in anyway. But you're doing yourself a disservice if it's an and or, and you're going to try to do both. Because by trying to do both, you're potentially going to do neither one well. You don't get bonus points for adding in things. And in fact, you may potentially just be creating an additional place to have a weakness. Maybe your first response is great, and you added another statement, and that one's a very poor response. Then you're going to lose points because you added that poor response into that didn't necessarily need to be in there. 5, EPA can't tell you to use the examples of tables and whatnot in the guidelines. I would encourage you to use them though. You don't get points knocked off because you didn't stick to the examples. But you're potentially introducing uncertainty on the part of the reviewer if you do something radically different. And I've seen people do things radically different that I thought were brilliant ideas. Made a lot of sense. And I've seen people do it and I could not figure out what they were trying to convey at all. 99% of the proposals the reviewers see for the examples provided in the guidelines are done exactly how the examples were. So when you throw in something different, you're switching things up for them all of a sudden, and they've got to try to interpret it. So if it is not crystal clear in how you have done it, I would strongly encourage you to stick to the examples. Number 4 is to get local data. This could be from talking to local groups that have the real data in your communities. Places like your utilities, and especially your police, your fire department. They have records of responses when they get called out. Maybe it's that old abandoned site that you know is constantly on fire. Go find out how many times the fire departments had to go there and explain what a drain on resources that is. Or the old building the police have to keep going through to keep trespassers out, or transient individuals, or code enforcement showing up. These are numbers you could go collect, and it creates that authentic, real story that's not generic. This also really helps build the case of things like resources being constrained, when you can show a reviewer, look at how many times the police or the fire department or code enforcement or utility issues have happened over here. You're backing it up with real local data from your community. Number 3 is don't be passive. You don't want to say things like close proximity or nearby, we encourage, or we hope. No, when you say things like that, it's a turnoff as a reviewer. I assume you're just kind of grasping at straws when I see it off the top of my head, when you say things like encourage or hope, because Maybe you're just trying to pull in what you think is what EPA wants to hear, and you have no intention of really doing it. The way to think about it when you phrase your goals and your plans is you either intend you are going to do these things, or you should stay silent about them in your grant proposal. And in some ways, I think the old guidelines were better from 2017 and earlier. And so, free little tip, I guess, if you never actually were around or read those, if you're new to this, although that was many years ago, so you could have been doing this for a while and still not know it. But one of the things I always liked they dropped was for your priority sites, it asked you for distance to residential and or sensitive populations. And so I think the best way for you to phrase that for your priority sites is, if that's going to be one of the cases you make, is that there's a school adjacent to the site. There's a nursing home 100 feet down the street. There's a subdivision 2 blocks away. Use some specific numbers so people can get an idea of what you mean instead of saying nearby. Because again, it depends on maybe where you live. You know, if it's in a rural area nearby, maybe it's a car drive. For me, nearby in Atlanta, got to be really close or I'm not going. And this is the biggest tip I think I could leave you with here. I think I actually skipped something. Oh, I am so sorry. I skipped number 2 and gave away my big ending. Make it readable. I picked out a really confusing picture on here on purpose because sometimes that's what the grants look like. When you start playing with the margins and the line spacing and the character spacing, and I know all the different little tricks to fit everything into a page limit, you're running the risk it gets tossed out for one. The other part of it is you're going to piss your reviewer off when they look at it and they're having to zoom in to, 200% on a page to try to read a line because it's all crammed together so tight. Or it's so tight when they print it out, you can't even mark it up without bleeding over into another line of text. You're setting a bad tone in their mind. And I hope that everybody can be fair and review things, but you're not starting off on the right foot with the person who is going to score this. So please stick to the suggestions in the guidelines. I can think of one in particular I read one time. Every time I looked at it, it gave me a headache. I really hated it, having to review it. And it set this bad tone in my mind before I'd even read anything in it. And shockingly, it was actually amazing. And it was probably one of the best RLFs I had ever read, for Wayne County, New York, in that might have been 2019. And I still remember it, mainly because it made me angry to begin with and turned out to be so great. So don't do that to your reviewers. And now for the big point I already gave away. If you don't tell the EPA part of the story, that economic need does not matter. EPA's mission is protecting human health and the environment. We aren't EDA or SBA or rural development. We are the Environmental Protection Agency. So you must tell this part of the story. Within the proposal for your sites or the contaminants, that is your source, and you need a detailed description of the risk. The way this came together in my mind was actually thinking about biology and vectors for pathogens, and I think it applies to contamination. So you have a source, and then you have to have a pathway. And these are the stories you tell, and it's not just the data, but this is the way the risk is transmitted from the source, and who and how the pathway puts people in the environment at risk. And you can't necessarily explain this just by giving us demographic data alone to show the risk. You have to connect the source, the pathway, and the impact in your proposal. So let's hit the road. Got all the tips out of the way. We've seen where we've been. So, we could talk at really great length about common mistakes, issues people make, really drilling down on some of those hard criterion. But I'm taking the opposite approach. I'm going to focus on what I think are the easy issues to fix to try to help you from preventing any of those. And so we're going a little bit out of order here in terms of the guidelines. So programmatic capability, the project area description twice, and then we'll get to community need and community engagement. I keep doing to myself with this. This is from programmatic capability. And I think the first time I ever put this together, I thought everybody would have time to sit down and read this, but never feel like I do. So I'll just go ahead and tell you, it talks about, this is from a real grant proposal, and I changed the names of everyone just to protect the innocent or guilty, maybe. It sounds okay when you read it at first. And what's missing? There's no qualifications listed for the individuals. There's no clear organizational structure on how to manage this grant. And there's no clear organization on who the final decision maker is. So please make sure you consider all of those things when you start addressing your organizational structure. These are the easy points. This didn't really have a great place to put it, but this is a real page from a grant application from FY21. So it showed up like this with a black box on it. And normally I want people to guess the page and be interacting with the audience. But this one was a grant that was submitted with a cover letter. And so if you go outside what the guidelines say you can submit, if it's extra pages, it'll just get removed. If it's pictures and things in it, or a cover letter, it's going to get a big black box over it, so the reviewers can't consider it in their evaluation. Once you focus on your project area description and your plans for revitalization, these are a list of some really common reviewer comments I've seen in the past. That the Brownfield challenges are not clear from the very beginning of your proposal. And maybe you get there in the end, but you really want to lay it out at the beginning. So you're not introducing that new information later on. Other things are like the site conditions for the priority sites are unclear or just not discussed at all. So if you say it's an old gas station, okay, is it abandoned? Is it still operational? Or an old warehouse? Same questions. Or is the roof falling in? Or things like that. The other really common one is questions about why these sites were selected as the priority. And it could be as simple as, community input was provided already. You did an inventory, and these are the best ones with that can meet your strategic goals of what you're looking for. Something else is within the redevelopment strategy and land use plans, it's really common to see people not cover all the target areas when they start having multiple target areas, which in the case of like a coalition, you have to. On the other grants, sometimes people with really large jurisdictions feel like they need a lot of target areas because they either for internal reasons or other reasons, they feel like they need a big representation. And this used to be really common with states, especially. You have these really disparate target areas, and you talk about the land use plans and try to nail them all down, but one would get left out. And so instantly points off. You also have to make it really clear that the end use of these sites align with the plans you discuss. You've got to leverage resources not linked to the grant. A lot of people in there will throw in, we got to apply for an EPA and assessment grant, then our leverage resources are going to be, we're going to apply for a cleanup grant. And it's really got to be more than that. This next one I put in there because this is I think the classic reviewer comment to take points off for and debrief comment. So I left the language how it normally is presented. How the grant stimulates the availability of additional funds for assessment or remediation and reuse is not addressed. So it's one of those and or questions there I brought up earlier. And another way to think about this is how will EPA's grant get you other funds such as grants or other private investment because of this, or local funding because of this? So within your project area description and plans for revitalization issues, in my mind, there's largely two categories of outcomes and benefits from your sites. There's the ones that are very tangible and direct and don't really need a lot of explanation to understand, like if you're going to turn a site into a park or affordable housing, or it's going to be used as a new local government building or open space. Okay. I think most reviewers, regardless of if they're Region 4 or you have a federal partner somewhere else or one of the other regional reviewers see it, we all have a pretty good idea of what all those things look like. The ones that are hard are the economic benefits. When you state these things, the benefits can be very amorphous unless you describe what they are. And these are the things everybody wants in their post. And if everybody's not even trying to make a case for them, you have to distinguish what they look like for you. And this is a case of where I think you will find some sort of tools or some sort of analysis to do projections or estimates. And off the top of my head, I can't think of anything, but you know those tools exist out there. So when you say increased employment or expanded tax base, what does that look like? I mean, are we talking, $1, $1 one job, 100 jobs, or increased property value? Okay, 1%, 5%, or reductions in vacancy, same questions. You have to define what that looks like. Otherwise, the reviewers don't know. So within the community need and community engagement section, just another list of some common things I've seen on debrief sheets internally. This happens a lot, that people don't explain how being low income or a small population limits their ability to fund the grant. And I think that's a fairly easy thing to answer. And I understand there's just so much when you write these grants, trying to fit them into the page limit, it's easy for it to get lost. For threats to sensitive populations, you've always got to tie it back to the target area. And the language in the guidelines is explaining how the grant will reduce the threat, essentially. You're not adequately describing how community members are involved is another one, or not explaining how the community input will be gathered and sought. And this is one of those I feel like it's classic to see on a reviewer score sheet that did not have a meaningful way of responding to community input. So this is something EPA takes seriously, and it's something reviewers, for better or worse, really focus on. So please, please, please think about these aspects, and hopefully you can address them well. Like I said, I think these in my mind are the easy fixes. But if you have additional questions, feel free to follow up with me. I wear a lot of hats. I'm the Land Revitalization Coordinator, and I'm the FY25 National Panel Coordinator for EPA Region 4, along with Nicole Rogers. Or feel free to reach out to my supervisor, Sarah Janovitz. If there's any questions, it went a little bit longer than I expected. I'd love to answer anything anybody's got. Thank you.
Derek, thank you so much for walking through both sort of the changes around the actual solicitations, but also giving us sort of a peek behind the veil, if you will, of a reviewer and some of those simple mistakes that are easy to fix on the front end.
Right.
And I really appreciate that. And lots of our sort of grant trainings, you touched on a number of things that we try to offer. So it was great to hear those things repeated and to know that we're on the right track and here in Kentucky in the way that we're hopefully helping people share their stories in new ways that are informed and connect in broad terms to the sites and the site impacts and how those impacts in particular relate and overlay with their plans and community engagement. So I love you being able to sort of tease out some of those components. I want to give folks who are with us just a couple minutes here. If there are any questions at all, I want to invite everyone to share it in the Q&A. We'll wait around just a minute. I want to give Derek an opportunity to address anything that you all may have. But again, I just want to say thank you all so much for joining us. We do not at this moment have a webinar scheduled for October. We're really putting all of our energies into our grant review event. So again, if folks are considering applying and are working on those applications right now, please consider joining us on October 16th for the grant review event. I will share those details when I send the recording out probably next week sometime, I hope. And I'll make sure you all get the pre-registration links for that. Not seeing any questions show up. So I guess, Derek, you knocked it out of the park. I really appreciate it. Again, thank you so much. And thanks for making yourself available today to share these sort of important tidbits with Kentucky and other partners on the webinar with us today.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate it. And I've kind of always had a soft spot for Kentucky. I wasn't always the state lead, but the former state, well, a couple of former state leads ago at this point. In 2017, never really traveled much. So I would go up and do some of his kickoff meetings and stuff. And that was really my introduction to Eastern Kentucky, especially. Some really touching moments, getting to meet with some of those people and see the impacts the program could have early on in my career at EPA. And so I've really enjoyed it since then.
I was going to say, we will welcome you back to Kentucky anytime you'd like to pay us a visit, whether we're visiting Eastern, Central, or Western Kentucky. The Bluegrass State really is an amazing place.
Well, thank you.
Landscape, but we would love to have you back anytime.
Well, I'll put in a shameless plug for the conference City of Louisville is doing on October 17th for Brownfields for bankers and developers. If anybody would like to come and join that, it's going to be, I believe the event's going to be at University of Louisville. I'm one of the speakers. I'm going to talk about liability along with Kirsten from the state of Kentucky and one of our technical assistance providers, New Jersey Institute of Technology.
And I will make sure to include that event as well when I send out the email. We've been including that in our webinar, or not in our webinars, but in our monthly newsletters. So hopefully you all have a great crowd in Louisville. And Derek, if I don't make it to Louisville, enjoy your time in Kentucky while you're here.
Oh, thank you.
You're very welcome. And for everybody that has joined us today, and for folks that may be watching this recording, we thank you for your time and really appreciate you all spending the time with us to learn how we can bring more money and investments here to the Commonwealth. Derek, thank you. Kirsten, thank you so much. And this concludes today's webinar. You all have a great day.
Thanks.